Hi, I'm Joe Tolles. Growing up in the foster care system, working within it, and single-handedly raising 8 teens adopted from the foster care system has given me a unique view into that world. My reputation for working to keep children connected, healthy, and happy with families who love them is important to me. Who I am today is a far cry from what my circumstances might have dictated. To start, I had to navigate my own childhood hurdles to become the athlete, father, and therapist I am today. Together with child advocate specialist Renee Damon and our guest, I will highlight the issues that impacted me on my journey, issues that are most likely impacting children and families today. Join us as we examine my first steps out of the starting blocks and into the race. Episode 7, A Roll of the Dice. From the moment I was born, my life was shaped by uncertainty. I was placed into foster care immediately, moving through 2 placements before I was even 8 months old. At an age when a child should be forming their first and most vital attachments, my world was shifting. Science tells us that the earliest years of life, beginning in the womb and extending through infancy, are the most crucial for brain development. By the age of 3, a child's brain is nearly 90% of its adult size. A third of my infancy passed without an uninterrupted attachment. I often wonder if my biological beginnings prepared me for what was ahead. Were the attachment deficits I experienced something unique to me, or were they part of a greater pattern, one embedded in my DNA? Was a detachment I felt hardwired into me? A legacy passed down from the losses and separations experienced by my ancestors? Fate, it seems, had a way of weaving my story into one that mirrored my past. My final placement, where I would grow up, fit so seamlessly into my biological narrative that it felt almost destined. My foster mother, a white woman from Barbados, had been abandoned by her own mother as a child. She never met her father. He was killed before she was born. And she was raised by older sisters before reuniting with her mother as an adult in New York. My foster father, an African-American man from Louisiana, had a family history largely unknown to him. Only recently did I learn that he and his siblings had spent part of their childhood in a New York orphanage, another generation shaped by early loss. Beyond their individual histories of abandonment and struggle, my foster parents' very union was an act of defiance against the times. They were married and had 2 children years before interracial marriage was even legal in the United States. The weight of that choice, the pressure of being watched, judged, and challenged, must have been overwhelming. For all the chances that I could have been placed with a family without this history of loss and trauma, destiny seemed to have won out. I became one of 6 core children raised by my foster parents. They had 2 biological children, and 4 of us foster children remained under their care for most of our lives. Others came and went, faces that blurred into memories of arrivals and departures. I remember that they were there, and then they were not. Like society itself, we lived in a house of secrets, and when I reflect on my foster parents, I see the same pattern, a cycle of disconnection, loss, and survival. Perhaps they struggled with parenthood because they had never been given a foundation of their own. In the end, I was raised by people who understood loss because they lived it. And somehow, through it all, we created a family. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. The household was heavy with structure and an unrelenting pursuit of perfection. My foster parents carried with them the discipline of the Old South and the strict values of the Caribbean. Their own upbringings, or lack thereof, must have only intensified their need to control and order. Added to that was the racial tension of the times, an ever-present scrutiny that must have made them feel as though every action was being judged. The pressure of being watched or proving themselves must have been overwhelming. It was an emotionally controlled environment where structure outweighed nurturing and shame based discipline kept us in line. Success was not an option, it was an expectation. We worked hard in school, worked hard at home, and recreation was not about fun or self discovery. It was about convenience and structure. It was always clear who was in control. My foster father ruled the household with unwavering authority. Duty and responsibility were absolute. Each morning, he left for work, and my foster mother, who did not work outside the home or drive, was responsible for preparing his coffee and meals. She spent her days cooking, cleaning, ironing, and caring for us. By the time my father returned in the evening, dinner was on the table, my mother was dressed and presentable, and we, like little soldiers, were expected to be obedient and compliant. This was the rhythm of our existence. It was a home shaped by duty, not ease, by control, not comfort, and yet within the rigid structure, a kind of love existed. It may not have been spoken, but it was there, buried beneath the weight of expectations and survival. I didn't always understand it then, but I see it now. I was raised by people who did the best they could do with what they had, people who carried their own wounds, yet still made the choice to take in a child who, like them, had already known loss. And in that way, maybe destiny won out after all. This week's guest is Charles Patterson, Joe's oldest foster brother.
Okay, hello. Hello, Charles. Welcome to Joe's and my podcast. It's so great to have you here today. Um, Charlie, I know that Charles, not
Yes,
Charlie,
yes,
Charles. I know you were in the same foster home as Joe was. Do you remember when Joe came into the home?
yes. He was about 18 months old, if maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, but in
10
that
months,
age
10
category.
months, 10 months younger,
Okay, so you were 10 months and not 18 months.
8 months.
Oh, 8 months. My math really is deplorable.
Well, yeah, I don't remember it. So,
He was a happy brother. He was so happy we nicknamed him Pal Joey. And that
yeah.
name stuck with him for a long time until it became evident all of us had to know our name, address, and phone number just in case we got lost somewhere.
So, but I wasn't the first.
First of what?
First of the foster children.
No, no, no. I don't remember who exactly was first. I know you were there. I remember Tony. He was there. Gonzalez. I remember Michael, he was there. I remember Carlton, he was there. Um, Curtis came a little bit after the whole deal, but and I don't remember anybody else. Those five folks stick out, five brothers stick out in my head.
So I refer to us as and the ones that you mentioned as the core children.
Agreed.
But there were foster children in the home before I was there.
I don't remember them. You're correct, but I just don't remember.
You
They
don't.
probably they were probably came for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, maybe up to a year, and then they were reunited with their real parents. But you guys were there for the long haul, and like I said, brothers from a different mother. Love you guys.
Yeah.
How did they explain that to you? Like, so you're talking about it. There you don't remember who came before, which they obviously they weren't there long enough to remember. Um, and then when we talk about us, he says, "I remember somebody that you being there. I remember someone being there." How did they explain what was happening when? Did they include you in the discussion? Did they say, "Hey, we're gonna have what did they do? You, I mean, if you remember, do you know what their thought process was, or just move over because you were making room for somebody else?
There was a two-step thought process. Step process number one. These were brothers that needed a steady place, steady love. They didn't get it from where they were, or their parents were economically not ready. They sure mom and dad didn't use economically, but probably
Right.
used the word something like they didn't have a lot of money. That's the process, and they needed a structure. Okay. The other thought of the process was that this was going to be an extra income into the family as well as giving these brothers love.
So they had a conversation with you about extra income?
Uh, that part of the conversation was really brief. Just how much extra income, I don't know. They never discussed that in detail, so I can't answer that question.
Wow, that I find that
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so
Um,
do I.
because they then, for lack of a better word, packed the house.
No, they looked at it like mom didn't work and dad did work. So mom was there 24/7, 7 days a week. And that, if she came from a large family like she did, she could keep up with a large family like she did do. If that makes sense.
Was that was that was that the thought?
That
um,
was the thought.
but by the way, I don't know if we said it that the people, mom and dad that we're talking about are your biological parents. You were not a foster child in the home. Um,
That would be correct.
do you remember if do you remember any sort of emotional reaction? Did you take to it like, okay, this is nothing, or even Jimmy having a reaction to uh
I don't remember any reaction other than the fact that, okay, instead of you two guys fighting over the room now, there's going to be some other folks in here and y'all can fight over the room together. That kind of thing. It wasn't a negative reaction. It was more like a brotherly reaction, so to speak. You're going to fight with these guys anyway, so you might as well have fun at it.
fun at it? Well, we weren't allowed to fight, remember? It's
Well,
like
the harsh words, or
right.
he pushed me, and dad had to be referee and all that, and he didn't referee all that well. His was more like both y'all go to your corners.
Yeah. You know, your I mean it's kind of, it's not surprising. You always refer to us as your brothers. And I just remember when I was younger feeling like you two, the two oldest, the biological children, being
Right.
like extra adults. Because you are what, 8 years older than I am?
Yeah,
Uh, um,
I was gonna ask what the age difference was.
okay. I am 73 today. What are you, Joe?
I'm 65. So,
So there's an 8-year difference. You're correct.
right. So, it wasn't like we were sharing clothes and, talking about the same sorts of things. And Jimmy was 1 year younger than you, correct?
Almost two. He was born in 53 and I was born in 51.
Okay. So, I remember, I mean, you guys were in charge, right? So like if somebody went out, they wanted to go somewhere, you guys were in charge of us, not necessarily um not necessarily like brother stuff, but like you listen to him kind of
Maybe
stuff.
we were the babysitters if they went out for a short time. If they went out for long periods of time, they'd get. I think the girl's name was Patty that lived around the corner. She was like a senior in high school, and they would get her to come in and make sure that everything went according to plan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize that Charles was not in foster care. Like that was his
Oh,
biological mom and dad. I didn't realize that. So Charles had the experience of having kids come into the home sometimes staying, sometimes not. And then there was a core of like five of you that were there always.
No, well,
And
there was this. There were two biological children, Charles and James,
okay,
and and then I was the oldest of the foster children, the core children, and
Correct.
those were really four. Um,
okay.
Curtis came much later. I was already in college when Curtis joined the family.
So
Renee,
Charles,
I
what was
got
that? Oh, go ahead.
I got to say one thing. And I'm say this sincerely. I'm a very fortunate guy. Not only did I have those brothers, I have another brother from a different mother that lives down here in Alabama with me. His name is Glenn. And I had a brother that passed away about 5 years ago. His name was Clay. And I think, Joe, you met him. And I was fortunate to have four mothers. I mean, how fortunate can a guy get to have four mommies? Could call either any of them mommy. But yeah, I was the oldest one there.
You,
Yeah.
let me just yeah, I know you had something to ask, but I want to.
Oh,
You're unusual in this
Who you
family.
talking about, me or Renee?
No,
Being unusual.
well, well, for this piece, it's you.
Okay,
You're unusual, and that you added sort of extended family or people that you've created family outside of your biological family. Um,
that's because they created me. Like they didn't say you need to call me Mrs. You need to call me Ma. You don't need to call him. You know what I'm saying? So I inherited. I didn't pick them. They picked me, and I was glad they did.
but you're unusual in that was not sort of the process of your biological family. Like, there wasn't, because I've seen and I've met some of these people, and I would say that the relationships, for lack of or just a general term, is that they're loving. And we weren't really warm and fuzzy growing up. We were more
No, we came from a
practical.
very strict household. If that's what you're trying to say.
Well, I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just trying to say that there were six of us, um, and you know different degrees of and I'm going to use this word intentionally, survival. And the ones that are still standing have sort of created family outside of their family. Does that make sense to you? Like there wasn't that sort of, I don't know if I don't really know what I'm feeling here or what I'm thinking here. It's like it wasn't modeled for us to do that. Like we were secretive, we were closed. They had they loved having fun. They had parties all the time, right?
Right.
But but in terms of caring about our social emotional growth, that was not a that was not a thing. It was like hard work, you know, work your ass off, get a civil service job, and you keep that job until you die, kind of
Well,
thing.
you have to remember that we grew up in an era where the motto was children should be seen and not heard. And that's the motto we grew up with, that, yeah, you can be seen here, but you need to keep your lips shut. And we grew up with that. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that was the way of the thinking in that particular household at that time with all of us. Didn't matter whether you were biological or not.
Right. And here I want to definitely say that I felt no difference. I felt no less uh belonging to that family than anything else. So in terms of foster care and not uh feeling like I fit in, because we were all treated the same way.
Yes.
And that was going to be one of my questions, if that was like the general feeling amongst everybody, because having the two biological boys in the home and then the foster brothers. That was going to be one of my questions. Like, did you feel that difference? Did it make a difference to Charles? Did it make a difference to you, Joe? But you kind of just answered that with saying that, we were a part of this family. And yeah. And when Charles said, that was the way I was grown up too, is that, you know what, you were to be seen, not heard. Keep your lips zipped, right?
Yep.
Um, so much different than it is today that we are just talking about everything and speaking about everything. But yeah, I was wondering if there was a difference there. Like, Charles, did you feel like Joe and the other were your brothers? And Joe, did you feel a part of that family? Like that was your family?
Which one of us you want us to answer first?
You
Either one.
you go, Charlie.
We'll go with
Okay.
Charles first.
Okay. I didn't feel like anybody was any different because when Pop laid out the rule, he laid it out for everybody. It didn't matter what his main rule. His main rule was if you talk back to your mother, I will crucify you. Basically, I mean he didn't crucify us, but he gave you the fear of God that if you talk back to mom, you were going to receive some serious, serious consequences, and it wasn't going to be go to your room.
It's
And
And
when
that
and
was
when
straight across the board for
oh yes.
everyone, right?
Yes. Yes, whether you were like biological or not, you talk back to your mother when I come home. If she hadn't spanked you already, you will get a spanking when I get in.
it, it was really, really, just in hindsight, such a for both of them, control was such a big issue. A real controlled setting, like they needed order. Um, and Charlie, I'm interested to hear what you think about. They didn't really handle, nor do I remember ever having any, but they didn't at least impress me as being able to handle crisis very easily because they was just so tightly wound. They were like, everything had a place and you had to do things the exact same way. Um, so what's your thought about sort of their, I'm going to use these word terminologies, is their social emotional ability to sort of be flexible with um, things that were out of the ordinary.
Well, everybody had a chore. Whether it was you wash, I dry, you sweep the floor, everybody had a chore. And it was based upon your age, what kind of chore you got. Obviously, when you're 5 years old, you do not get to wash the dishes. You may get to crumb the table or clear the table off a little bit or sweep the floor, but you're not going to wash the dishes and break the plates. The only time I remember them stepping out of the norm is when James, he was, I want to say 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there, and they could not get him to stop wetting the bed. For some reason, he was a late bloomer on that. And because of that, we wound up going to, I don't know if it was a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or what, but the four of us wound up going there. And Pop, after about the fifth or sixth visit, he said, I had enough of this blank. And that was the end of that. So, no, there was mental, um, no more mental professional help services coming in. You was either going to be play the game my way or you don't play the game at all.
Well,
And
yeah,
my brother caught a lot. He had to wear signs saying I went to bed when he went to school. I mean, but finally, I guess when he turned about 14, he quit for some reason. They tried everything in the book. Nothing liquid after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He still went to bed. Nothing liquid after 12 o'clock at noon, and he still went to bed.
wow,
Um,
you just reminded me. Oh God.
But you,
I-
none of us had that problem. We got to a certain age, 3, 4, 5. I don't know what the magic cutoff age was, but we got to that age when we just, got up when we had to go to the bathroom.
See, there's a part of you that's really an extension of them in that that's just the way it was, right? And there's a
Yes.
part of me that cringes when, because he wasn't the only one. Like I completely forgot about because Michael also was given a sign and he had to walk up and down the block wearing this sign as an incentive to stop wetting the bed. It's like it's to me, from a clinician's perspective, uh, that's just not helpful. I mean, at a minimum, that's just not helpful. But
Well, they
but
thought back in the day that was their thinking that, if we
well,
shame you enough, you'll get over it.
you know what? I, I there was a lot of structure and clearly the children should be seen and not heard. But I don't think that um, it's fair to put that on the generation. I always go back to, so how did they get to where they are? And this is where we have as many questions as more questions than answers. Because we did not, like Dad, for instance, you referred to him as the person who could have raised John Wayne, right?
Yeah, oh
um,
yeah, yeah.
um, but we don't really know anything about him.
The
And
only the only one you might want to think about contacting, and I'm not sure, is Eugene
yeah,
Junior.
we've talked about this. Like people don't really have any information because, and I'm not talking about, and Eugene is our father's brother. I mean, I'm sorry, a nephew. So his father is my our father's brother. Um,
Correct.
like I you remember calling you about like maybe 10 years ago and saying I found out that they were all in an orphanage, and I had to find that out through ancestry. We did not have any idea that there was a that they were all in foster care. I mean, sorry, not foster, well, an orphanage in the Bronx. So we don't know
Right.
anything about their.
Your dad was in an orphanage?
Yeah, yes.
We don't know
Oh, wow.
we don't know anything about his father. So you never met your grandfather.
No.
Um, I don't ever remember meeting his mother. You did not either, right? Did you meet
No, I
her?
never met. Somehow or another, it all started in Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana. How they got to the Bronx and who brought them up there and all that, that is a cloud that we'll probably never know.
Right.
Probably the only one that may have been able to answer that question is Alice, and she's no longer among the living.
Yeah, I asked her some questions and she didn't really have answers either. So
Okay.
so nobody was really talking, like he was a closed book.
Oh,
So he clearly, just from those bits and pieces had childhood trauma that
right.
sort of created who he is. And he was not the oldest, was he, Charlie?
No, Eugene was the oldest. Pop was second. I'm sorry, Henry was second. Pop was last, and that's
Last.
among the boys. Now, the I think Ida was the oldest out of the Patterson clan.
So clearly, like, and I don't know if they went, how they got out of the orphanage. Did they go? I
I
don't.
don't
We don't
either.
have no idea where they went. But so there was all of that, and I
So
was.
when you were in this home, Joe, and Charles, you never met your grandparents of your foster parents.
No.
The only grandparent I met was my mother's mother. And we called her Granny, and that's the only grandparent I met.
And I met her once, and it was incredibly frightening experience. She
Really?
was, yeah, she was, yes. I don't, I remember it's probably the first time I was on a subway. Um, we went to visit her. I was young, I young. I don't even know if I was in elementary school yet, but it was such a dramatic experience that I'll. So we went and she just verbally was attacking me. She just clearly she had some mental health issues, and
Okay.
and so I don't know, I can't recall enough to be able to sort of sit back and make a diagnosis, but she was clearly distressed. She was she thought I was James,
Oh,
and she was just, it was frightening. It was frightening because I didn't know who this person was. I had never met her, and she was sort of out of control. I don't remember mom being really rattled by it. So maybe she had an expectation that, I don't know what she was going through, but clearly there was some expectation. And then in terms of mom, there was no, we knew her, we knew stories about her family. We met her sisters and brothers, but her mother left her to be raised by her siblings when she was young.
Correct.
I don't know how young, but so she was left. Her father was murdered before she was born or shortly after, is how the story goes. Or let me say, they think he was murdered. Um, and so those things you never really got to talk about.
right.
We
I
weren't
do,
old enough. Maybe if we were older, um, we would have been able to discuss them. But when you're 5, 10, 15, 5, 10 years, 8 years old, they give you well, he passed away on a fishing boat. Boom. And that's the end of it. You didn't think any more of it. But,
yeah.
if we were older, maybe we would have learned more.
Yeah, he disappeared from a fishing boat is like not
Right.
just he not passed away on a fishing boat. He's like he was on a fishing boat and then he wasn't on a fishing boat. But
Right.
and obviously that wasn't processed through the family. But I will say that I am, only now I'm able to recognize that I am an extension of that person that I was. And so,
Okay.
although my personality might have been different and I was more introverted, I was always questioning everything. So I asked questions when I heard stuff, and I was shut down immediately. And sometimes with just with I don't know if it's fair to say anger, but it's like you don't get to none of your business kind of thing. You don't. I didn't get to ask those questions, and probably because of my age. Um, Not that the answers were not there, but nobody was willing to talk about that. That's a symptom of that part of society too, with the secrets and that generation. I mean, the secrets and the inability to trust that the information that you're going to relay will be kept secret. So everything was just sort of stuffed in a box, and you didn't dare open that box.
Agreed.
Um, so you know, the two episodes prior to this were one about my biological parents, um, and it it just strikes me that, you know, of course I'd end up here. Like it's not it's and I say that in terms of that childhood thought that, I'm cursed. So I ended up in a household where I spent the rest of my time in foster care, um, with people who had suffered childhood trauma, that probably didn't process it well. Um, Social emotional awareness was stunted at the most. Um, and so, it sort of was the continuation of, in my head, my young head, continuation of the curse. Like,
Mm,
geez, like, like, when am I going to get a break? And my sister, my biological sister, talked about her life being cursed too, and my brother did as well. Um, and so as a child, you kind of look for answers about, um, like, why is this happening to me? Um, but that was my family. I mean, that was my family, and that's where I belonged. And so there was a big part of me that sort of adopted that, well, this is just how it's going to be. Um, that sort of that's what they were reinforcing. It's like life is tough, throw some dirt on it and keep moving forward. So in
Basically,
terms,
basically, you're right. It was we were reliving the old West days.
the
I mean, there's no other way to say it. You know, there was no psychiatry back in the old West. You either grew up and went this way, or you grew up and wound up on Boot Hill. There was no in between. And I think that's where Pop got the way he was raised. Even though he spent part of his life in an orphanage, it was either grow up and shut up or grow up and do whatever. And we just got raised that way. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that was the way we were raised.
right.
Right.
And you know, I can't determine my opinion, which is uh not objective, is
Okay.
that their process of parenting, which I would consider limited, um, didn't work for most of us. It worked
Okay.
for you, and it worked for me, and everybody else was, for lack of a better, more impacted by, like James, for instance, was, I there's a big part of me, um, and later I'll talk not in this episode, but I'll talk about that. But real, like, sorry for, he couldn't handle the structure. He needed more social emotional attention um, than either you or I. Now, I think what happened for me was that dad left. He left, I right before I got into middle school, and that opened the door for me to attach to social emotional things similar to you, where you've like sort of built these relationships outside of the family where people sort of got you in with my teachers and my coaches up until that point. So that was so I think it's fair to say that my athletic ability was really the door that sort of saved me. It allowed me to become more than I could, that I be the best that I could be. And I was not allowed to participate in sports unless I had an A.
Mm.
And so
That
when,
sounds about right. Pop
yeah,
was real
well,
strict on those grades, you know.
yeah, it was not about the social emotional benefits of participating in everything. You need to do your studies need to be exemplary before you can even think about adding anything else to the plate, which I think is a huge mistake. I mean, as a coach, as a former athlete, um, that was what I attached to that helped propel me to better academics. Um, so it was, and the things that you talked about, the way we were raised, if we looked for a second outside the window, our peers were running, jumping, and playing when we weren't. Like
That was because we had chores.
well, and I don't imagine they didn't have chores either, right? But Saturday morning, like clockwork,
Oh yeah,
when they were playing
Yeah.
football catch in front of our house, we were pulling weeds and you know,
correct. But you got to admit, Pop was fair. He didn't signal Joe. You go do. He said he used to sit down in that chair at the dining room and holler upstairs, and he could count how many feet hit the floor.
yeah,
Okay, and if all them feet didn't hit the floor, he knew exactly what foot didn't. Michael, you're not moving. Don't make me come upstairs. But everybody had a Charles cut, Joe Rake, James did this. So he was fair with the work, buddy.
he was fair with it, but there was no balance is really, I guess, my point.
Well, the
Um,
point is, I'm saying that Michael didn't get to go outside and play football while you and I cut the grass. I mean, Michael had a job.
Well, the other thing that I think that was prevalent in that household, not so much. I'm gonna for mom, it was a big thing. Was that um, you they didn't distinguish, they didn't individualize people's talents or skills. So, for instance, if we all got up on Saturday and we all had to do work, um, we were not done until the slowest performing person was done. Um,
Correct.
and mom did not have the ability to, um, and I think it was based on just misguided fear, because I think it was a core of her parenting, is that she wouldn't give attention to anybody who was excelling, in fear that it would make the person who was not excelling feel bad.
That's a possibility. I never looked at it that way.
Well, so I'll use this example. So, track and field again. I excelled in track and field. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. There were newspaper articles. I would, be in the paper every Sunday. That was my identity outside of the house. Mom never came and saw me run.
Don't feel bad. She didn't come and see me run either when I ran track.
Well, I think though that had she didn't, if she couldn't do for all, if I could almost hear her saying something like this, if she couldn't do for all, she wouldn't do for any. So
That's possible.
yeah, but I also think that it was connected to not making anybody feel bad because she didn't show up to everything. And of course, there were six of us. She could not do that, right? So, um,
The
Joe,
only
you
thing,
mentioned, oh,
go
sorry,
ahead,
Charles.
Renee. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Renee.
No, no, finish your thought, please.
The only thing I remember mom ever showing up for us, we were in junior high school, was when the eighth graders challenged the ninth graders in some sort of intramural um, um, uh, in the gym. And the parents were invited, da 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 da. And that's the only thing I can remember mom ever showing up for me on any sport that I played. And I only played track 1 year, and I wasn't all that good in it. And I did basketball for half a year because I really sucked at that. So, but she never showed up for anything else to my knowledge. If she did, I don't know anything about it.
wow. Well, I know because I have photographic evidence that she they showed up for your graduations.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously in that, yeah.
I don't remember that she showed up for mine.
I
Uh,
don't know. I
yeah,
was in the military.
yeah. Um, you said something to me. We were talking last week, and I was really taken back by it. I'm sorry, Renee. You were going to ask a
Oh,
question.
go ahead, Joe. Go.
Um, you said that you felt that we were the lucky ones because we were protected by being in foster care.
Yes.
I, from that to me is like shocking because I didn't feel protected and lucky. But can you talk a little bit about what you felt, because that was obviously based in a feeling. Um,
Well, yes, I can. For example, if I did something wrong and required 5 lashes with a belt, I got the 5 lashes with a belt. If you did something wrong, it could have been the same thing. You might have only got a half of a lash because mom would be whispering in the pop's ear, the social worker coming next week. You don't need to put no marks on these boys.
you
So,
never heard her. Did you?
yeah, yes, I did. Yes. How you think I know that? um, because that was one of the things that everybody was afraid of. Just like if mom had gotten beat up by pop, which they never hit each other, and the social worker came and saw her with a black eye, they'd have probably removed all y'all from the home. But at the same token, that's the only reason I feel that way. Because when Pop got angry and I did something wrong, I got a backhand. There wasn't no,
Well,
laid out on the floor. I throw some cold water on you, and when you wake up, you'll understand why you were down. He could never do that with you or
listen,
Michael or
dude,
Gonzalez or any of
I,
them.
I lies. Like, listen, not to dismiss your feelings, but those things were happening to me as well.
Let
Like
me ask you.
I
Let me ask
can't.
you this. Wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
Wait a minute. Let me ask you this. Did you ever get a spanking with a washing machine rubber hose?
Yes.
You did
Oh,
that too?
Joseph, yes.
Yes. That was
A
like
washing machine. I
that's a
want to make sure we're on the same page.
no, we did not. I tell you, I
Okay.
that was a big thing for me. I had to process that into my adulthood.
I
That
had to process that going to school the next day.
well, but we, I mean, it was first of all, if I were a social worker and knew
She would have probably pulled you all. You would have probably pulled yourselves
I
out of there.
absolutely. Um, but there was a air of fear. I was
Yes.
more afraid of them. So it made life heavy. It wasn't light and airy, and it wasn't warm and fuzzy. It was fear based. Um, not
One more
that
question, Joe. Did you ever have to carry a note to school and give it to the teacher? Please excuse Charles for not being able to sit down today. We had a problem with his conduct and we had to get it adjusted last night. I
not
remember that. It was in
I,
third grade, and I had to give that to Mrs. Peterson. She was my third grade teacher in Smith Street School.
I don't remember ever having to do that, but I do remember. First of all, let's not leave this hose thing. We're talking about the thick black hose
Yeah.
that connects the water to the dishwasher.
Washing
That's what we were hit with. And I preferred being hit by dad because he had good aim and he was patient. I couldn't stand being hit by mom because she was too emotional. And
Yep.
she would hit you just because we would be moving around. Dad, if I knew if I stood still, it was going to land where it needed to hit, and then it was over.
On the
But
booty.
but that in itself, but I do remember, um, which was part of all of it, right? I remember you going to having to go to school. Dad went to school with you or showed up at your school and
Mm-hmm.
and made you drop your drawers and beat you in front of your classmates.
Yep.
I
Wow.
like
That
That blows me away.
I was in elementary school, but I was what my father would consider the class clown. And his thoughts were, you can be stupid. Everybody cannot learn at the same ability. I understand that. You may be slow, but you're going to have an A in conduct because that told me you were paying attention and not being the class clown. If you got a D or an F in conduct, that's why you didn't learn it because you were too busy being the class clown.
yeah, well, needless to say, so listen, we could talk about all of the
Oh
sort of
yeah.
things that they did that were just at a minimum questionable. Um, but it really set up an atmosphere of thickness, like it
Of
sucked the
what?
air, sick, just just heavy, just like
Okay.
not ever being able, I remember never being able to just relax without waiting for, I was always on edge waiting for the next thing to happen. Um, and you,
Mhm.
and you just left. The minute you could leave, you left. So I'm assuming that you were leaving for the same reasons.
I had no choice. I had three choices and I had to make one. Pop did not believe in taking a year off to go find yourself. That was the biggest bunch of hooey dooey he ever heard of, and you're not going to live here with it. He gave you said you can go to school full time and work part time, and you can live here, and I will help you. You can work. You can go to school part time and work, and I will help you. You can get a job, but if you have a part time job, a full time job, you're gonna pay rent for that bed. You're not gonna stay here for free. or you can move out and get your own place and be your own boss. So that's what I did. I moved out and went into the military and was my own boss. There were very limited choices. I did not have the grades to go on to college. I was probably a D or C student, and so that was not really an option for me. And I could not see myself working at Modell's, making $3 an hour, and trying to survive in an apartment and all that good stuff. So I joined the military.
And so that was, in addition to the kids that came and left, because there were other kids that came and left while I was there.
Right.
And then you just leaving. And I'm saying just leaving as if it were like I woke up one day and you were gone. I'm sure I knew that you were going. Um, it was, and knowing, some of the things that they did to reinforce positive behavior, like pack your clothes, go sit on the, and this was not dad because dad was at work most of the time. Pack your bags, sit out on the porch. I'm calling the county to come pick you up. Um, didn't make for like comfort and consistency and security. It was always a, just always so heavy. It was just so, that's the word that I keep coming up with. It's sort of suffocating.
I
It's like,
don't know if you remember this, Joe, but there have been times where Pop told that to James. Um, you call when the social worker leaves, have your bags packed because you're going to be going out the door with her. He said, I'm not having some person come in here and tell me how to raise my kid, whether I can spank him or don't spank him. So there were several times. And the last time I remember, Pop went upstairs and got the suitcase and put his clothes in it. And I think that was the last time James, because James he liked to yank that chain, um, and so there have been many times when him and Pop fell out, really bad.
well, see, so maybe not so different because you also were witnessing kids come and go, right? Like, I was looking at that from a perspective of being in foster care, but we both were raised in an environment where that was an option that was stated to us and actually practiced up to the point where nothing ever happened. But like, oh no, this is real. You were going to
But when you're
feel
when you're
the
when you're a kid
reality of,
growing up, you don't know what is real,
right,
whether he's serious or whether he's teasing or whether he is like, I'll drive you down to the judge's house. I don't really care.
right, right. Which just goes back to their inability to sort of nurture any social emotional muster to see maybe there's a different way. Like,
Yeah,
um, you know, uh, so
But you mentioned, Joe, at one point that your dad left the house. Did he leave the house for good?
he, this is how I remember it. Well, yes, I'm going to talk extensively about this because this is a bigger issue, but
okay,
I'll, I'll, I'll share that he got up to go to a wedding and never returned.
correct. And
Now,
that's what I found out from Mom. Um, that and I was already gone, so I wasn't.
That's what I was going to ask if
yeah,
Charles was already gone. And how old were you then, Joe?
this is, I'll know when by the time we get to that episode, but
Okay.
Junior high school, maybe.
I don't know that I was in junior high school. It may have been my first year of junior high
Okay,
school. Um,
because I
but
was ducking bullets.
right. Well, I was 10 years old when you left.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
And so
I went to the Renee. You got to excuse the vernacular, but I went to the vacation paradise of the Southeast Asia from '69 till '73, somewhere in there.
yeah.
And you could get a tan if you didn't get killed.
Wow.
Okay. So and in addition, this is going to be another piece that all of our experiences were happening during, I would arguably one of the most tumultuous periods of history in the United States. There was somebody that was just getting assassinated, or there was a war. Things were happening constantly that weren't, for society. I guess it may have made it even heavier. But we were sort of trapped in this social bubble of all of this stuff happening, and then trapped in the home where there was a bunch of stuff happening. Things changed dramatically after Dad left, and
Right.
the one thing that you know I just he just left. He
Even Alice said that.
he just left, and as if we didn't matter. And you know he just he just left, and that you know is just not a good feeling. Like, so that's why the whole social emotional piece, it's like, didn't you care about me? And then I'm going to personalize it. It's like, he just left. And as a little boy, and even as you hear me say this as an adult, it's like, you just left. You just left. And like, I can't wrap myself, I can't comfort myself around, and I don't want to deeply think about that. But my God, you just left. And that was just, I don't even, I don't even know what word to say.
It was so impactful on so many different levels at that age for you as well. It had to have been very impactful
Yeah. And I was going
in
to
so
use,
many different ways.
I was
Yeah,
going to say it's unforgivable, but that's not even what it's about.
right.
It's like, it's foreign to me to be able to disconnect that easily. So I think it's unbelievable, really. It's like, I can't do that.
Because was there a relationship after he left, or was
He
it
was
he was just gone?
No, he left. I'm not talking about that he left the house and then
Right.
saw us every other weekend. Or he left, and that was it.
And
And
was
that
that
was
ever discussed? Did like mom ever have conversations about, and
we
that
did
was kind of like that.
there was never any discussion about anything.
But didn't Mom try to commit suicide over that?
That's going to be a whole other thing, but yes. And
Okay.
yes, uh there there were, and all of those things were secrets.
Right.
So we didn't get to talk about any of this stuff that was happening. We didn't get to process it out. We didn't get to, it's throw some dirt on it, let's move ahead.
Yeah.
And so all I'll say about, because there's more to the story about um uh, you know uh, our mother's attempted suicide, is that she was ready to leave us right on the heels of our father leaving. She was voluntarily making an attempt to leave us too. And to process that, as I don't, I'm not sure how old I was. It was just, I mean, and there's just some other pieces that even heighten that feeling of like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like, oh my God. It's like, it's just, I and I have to do those separately, because they're sort of emotion packed, and I'm not wanting to like get to a point where I can't tell the story objectively enough to be able, um and it's going to make I think another interesting podcast story. um but yeah, so Charles just left, dad just left, and mom
I
just
see.
tried to leave. In addition to whoever the other kids that came and left.
Right.
So, um, but we have survived. Our relationship has grown since then.
Now,
Um,
did you two always stay? Have you always stayed in touch? Was there a time that Charles and you did not? Was there like any periods there, or were you always kind of in touch with each other?
I'm curious. Yes, I have an answer for that, but I want to hear what Charles has to say.
There were those moments and times where we didn't. Nobody's fault. Um, I was like he said, I was older. I've been married several times, and things change. He still, whether I talked to him or not, or kept in touch with him or not, he's still a brother from a different mother, and that again, that's never going to change. Whether I talk to you today and don't talk to you for another 10 years, it doesn't. I don't look at it the same eyesight you do. Um, War has a habit and it was a way of changing folks. And I'm not saying it's a good change. I'm not saying it's a bad change. I'm just saying it's a change. And you um, somehow or another you disconnect because of what you've seen and what you've done and what you might do. So you stay disconnected.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say that you know, that disconnection was just you leaving the home and trying to find the place. I never felt like it was personal, but he was always
It was. It was never personal.
he was always sort of like like he was my older brother, my oldest brother, and I idolized him to somewhat. I like when he left, I collected everything that he had left behind. So he had a record collection that I kept, and I made sure nobody touched it, and I kept it safe. Now this
I did
is
not know
I
that.
yes, well you did because it was at 10 years old. This is what I was doing, right?
Okay.
And I graduated from high school and went to college and took that record collection with me to college. And he came to visit me. So this is at least 10 years later, right?
At
Or
least because
eight.
you went to Auburn, right?
Yes, you came to
And
visit me there. And
I think me and Tammy came up and saw you.
yes, and I presented him at that time with his record collection. I was very disappointed that he wasn't more excited about it. But 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 that's the type of like just an indication of the type of
He
connections
was your
I made.
brother, right? He was your
Right,
brother, just like
right,
Charles said that you could have gone 10 years without speaking, but you've always been his brother.
right.
And you've always spoken of Charles as my oldest brother.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that was the moment that things sort of shifted because it was probably a little bit after that, but it was shocking to me because I don't know what it was, Charlie. You called me to ask me for my opinion, and I was just so like it could have been the most stupid thing. I don't know what it was, but after that, I was so like like kid like
Yeah.
he asked
My oldest brother that I idolized called me and asked me for my opinion. He really wants my opinion? Yes, he
That's
did.
there was that disbelief, and then I was like, oh my god, like he values what I have to say. And so we've been in touch ever since. I mean, it's not like we the time between him leaving at 18 and me turning 18, 19, whatever, how old I was at that time, was a time where there was that gap. He was married and unmarried and married and like, and then traveling and deciding to live in his life, trying to find himself. And so was I. So there wasn't it
Right.
wasn't we didn't have the everybody come home for Christmas kind of family. Like that wasn't what we did. Um, so it wasn't like I saw him every Christmas or Thanksgiving. That was not that wasn't a real tradition for us. So, but after that, it was like, and so we're in touch all the time now. Um, in fact, he only lives like how many miles away? 50 miles or
I know.
something?
When I found that out, I was like, that's so super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, uh, yeah, it's an interest. It's for me, it's an interesting way to sit back and look at life and be able to see it. I say this that I view my life as a movie. So I'm able to connect to the incidents and relationships that I've had in the past in a different way than I think other people express it. I don't know that they don't do that, but I am still connected to. I think that everybody I have met um, has had an impact on me, and they become a part of who I am, and I can have this ability to sort of pull from those moments and sort of relive them in a way that I appreciate, you know, and I hope telling those stories sort of helps other people appreciate it as well.
Well, this has been cool. It has. It's been really super cool for me because I've known Joe for quite some time now, and being able to meet the other significant people that were in his life and a part of his life is just so amazing to me. And being able to meet you, Charles, as his older brother, because I've heard Joe talk about you so often, has really been, again, just amazing to be able to see all these pieces to the puzzle of Joe's journey and what that's looked like. So thank you so much for being so open and coming in to join us and be a part of this. It really means a lot to me, and I know that it really means a lot to Joe.
Anytime, anytime, anytime.
All right. Well, thank you, my brother.
You too, brother.
I will see you soon, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah, well, that would be a good thing.
Yes. All right. Well, I'll let you know when this is coming out. Love you.
All right, love you too, man. Good to
All
meet you,
righty.
Renee. Have a
You
good day.
too, Charles. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to Out of the Starting Blocks and Into the Race. We want to thank you for joining us, and we want to thank our guests for helping us out today. Check out joetools.com and look for your opportunity to have a voice in our backstage discussions where we continue to discuss our important topics. Remember to look for updates at joetools.com where you can book a speaking engagement and get in touch with the hosts.
Remember, the baggage that we carry is a lot lighter when we remember to make space for help.